I'm going to start with a verse today, and it's from Deuteronomy. And it's especially for the Gen Zers that are in the building. Are there quite a few Gen Zers? So I need you to help me at the end of this verse. Charlie, you too. And you must love the Lord your God with all your heart, your soul, and your strength. And you must commit yourself wholeheartedly to these commands that I'm giving you today. That's back in Deuteronomy. That's a long time ago. Moses wrote this. Repeat them again and again to your children. Talk about them, and when you are at home, and when you are on the road, and when you're going to bed, and when you are getting up. And that is from Deuteronomy 6:7. Yeah. Yay! So, most of you won't understand what I'm going to say, but again, this is for the Gen Zers. I really love you guys, so you can pay me later. It's wonderful to see so many of you here, and I love it that you're at the front. And I've prepared a welcome just for you. So, yo fam, welcome to church. Before anything else, vibe check. This place is all about love, joy, Jesus, no cap. Whether you've got Sunday drip or just rolled in low-key, you're in the right spot. We're here today to slay the doubt, hype the hope, and lift up the real goat, God, above all. If you're feeling awkward or thinking it's kind of sus, bet you'll catch a blessing before you bounce. The worship was lit, the word's going to have mad riz, and the community straight fire. That's good. Thank you. Thank you. So, if you didn't ask about that, ask your kids later. They'll tell you everything. There's lots more where that came from. So I have a question for you, and this is, you get to participate again. When you think of Boaz from the book of Ruth, what word comes to your mind when you think of Boaz? So I'm not going to give you any other information, but when you think of Boaz, what word comes to your mind? Just call it out. Pardon? I didn't quite hear that. Goal. G-O-E-L. Goel. Okay. Another word.
Rich farmer.
Rich farmer. Yes, he was a rich farmer. Guardians of the what? Guardian Redeemer. Yes, he was a redeemer. Absolutely. Another one. Apathetic. Or empathetic. Empathetic. Yes, he had incredible empathy. Empathetic. So I've got a list here. Some of those things are on my list. And he had incredible integrity. Not on this list, he was a protector. He was generous. He was discerning, for sure empathetic, respectful, faithful. He was intelligent, a thoughtful employer, and rich, yeah. He was a redeemer, kinsman redeemer. He was brave, and he was kind. He was incredibly kind. All these characteristics of Boaz are woven in the book of Ruth. It's only 4 chapters, so you can easily read it. It's a wonderful story. And there's so many pictures of Jesus in this story. It's incredible. I'm going to talk about the characteristic that I think is the most foundational to the book of Ruth, and that's the characteristic of kindness. Boaz was incredibly kind. And I'm going to talk about how living a kindness lifestyle, as opposed to just doing a kind thing, is going to make a huge difference in your life and the life of others. Living a lifestyle of kindness. The book of Ruth begins with a tragedy. So here we have Naomi. She's an Israelite woman, and she's married a man from Moab. We're going to talk a little bit about the Moabites later, but she married a man from Moab. Her husband died. So did her 2 sons. Devastating. And so she was left now with her daughter-in-laws. One was Orpah, and the other was Ruth, right. And so she decided, well, she was actually nervous because she didn't have any relatives. She needed a relative who could support her and marry her, hopefully an older, like a relative that was far down the line, and who could marry her and could be her kinsman redeemer or Ruth or something. Because there was one really horrible thing in the ancient world, and that was widows and orphans. They were usually poor, not taken care of. And so she needed to get out of Moab and move to her hometown, which was Bethlehem. Who was born in Bethlehem? Jesus was born there. Now, God's law provided that the nearest relative of the dead husband should care for the widow, but Naomi had no relatives in Moab, so that's why she moved. And then Ruth did not want to stay in Moab. She wanted to continue on this journey to Bethlehem with Naomi. And she said this, "Your people will be my people, and your God will be my God." So here we are, we have two widows, no money, no protection, no future. And by all cultural standards, Ruth is the most vulnerable because she is a widow, she's poor, but unlike Naomi, she is a foreigner. She is from Moab. And she's moved to a country that's not her own, to a country whose people, the Israelites, actually despised the Moabites. So she's really not going to friendly territory. And her mother-in-law, Naomi, they're in a dire situation together. But Ruth is extremely resourceful. Oh, there's Ruth. She decided to gather grain in a farmer's field nearby, and she happened on a field owned by a wealthy landowner. That man was very right. The landowner was named Boaz. Now, the law, which was called the Torah provided, and that's the books they had. They only had the first few books of the Old Testament, and they had that, and of course, I don't know if it was in written form, but they had that, and it provided for gleaning as a way to support. Sorry, this is weird. No, I'm good. God wants to rescue me. They provided for people who were poor, and orphans and widows, to come onto the field after the reapers had sowed and gleaned the field, and they would come and glean after that and pick up any leftover grain or at the edge of the field. And that's what they provided for. And it was expected that the landowners would allow this, okay? So Ruth started gathering grain on the field, and who noticed her but Boaz? He noticed her. And this is what he said in Ruth chapter 2. And by the way, back then, it was very small communities. Everyone by now knew who Ruth was. They knew that she came here with Naomi. Naomi was coming back home. Hello, Naomi, welcome. Everyone welcomed Naomi, I'm sure, and Ruth was a Moabite. And so this is what he said. "My daughter, listen to me. Don't go and glean in another field, and don't go away from here. Stay here with the women who work for me." So he spoke to her kindly, he called her his daughter, and he invited her to stay gleaning with the people, with the women. So that kindness of Boaz encouraged her to belong with that group. Then he continues, "Watch the field where the men are harvesting and follow along with the women, and I've told the men not to lay a hand on you." So there's a story there. I don't know what it is, but he gave good instructions to the men, stay away from Ruth, and Boaz told the men to leave her alone. He went the extra mile to ensure her safety. So he encouraged belonging, and then he encouraged protection. And then he said, "And whenever you are thirsty, go and drink from the water jars the men have filled." So he made sure that she had plenty of grain, that she was protected, and that she had enough water to drink. So he showed kindness through provision. That's quite something. He didn't just meet her physical needs, he met her emotional and her relational needs. And he guaranteed her safety, he gave her dignity and a place among his workers. Something every human heart longs for. Boaz didn't have to do this. He could have just said, "Yeah, I've done my duty, she's gleaning the grain, and that's it." But he went above and beyond. Kindness says, what more can I do to bless this person? I remember asking my dad one time. My dad lived with me for 12 years. My mom had severe Alzheimer's by this time, and he lived with me for 12 years with my family. And I remember asking him, "What are you going to do today?" "Well, I'm going to wake up in the morning, and I'm going to think of some names, and then a name will come to my mind, and I'll just go and bless that person. I might go and visit them or phone them. I'll just see how I can bless. I just wake up and say, who can I bless today?" Isn't that what everybody does? So here's Ruth's response to Boaz. She fell at his feet and thanked him warmly. "What have I done to deserve such kindness?" she asked. "I am only a foreigner." Now, kindness in the Hebrew, so Hebrew is the Old Testament. The Old Testament is written in Hebrew. What's the New Testament written in? Greek, right? So Hebrew is the Old Testament language, and the word for kindness is hesed. And it doesn't mean just one word. It actually means quite a few words. It means steadfast love, mercy, loyalty, covenant faithfulness. It goes much further. It doesn't translate hesed means kindness, and it means kindness in English. It actually means so much more, and it's demonstrated through action, through a love and giving mercy and being loyal and faithful. It's love that goes above and beyond. It's an action. And it's someone with compassion, and they're committed to being kind. They wake up and think, how can I be kind? Boaz didn't say to himself, well, the law allows this foreigner to pick up grain, so I won't stand in the way. I've done my due diligence. No, he's told her to stay here and glean with the workers. He showed her compassion and commitment and hesed, kindness. Now, we see this word, this same word, hesed, which is one of the richest words in the Hebrew Bible. It is used in Exodus 34 in an amazing way. It's used by God himself when he's describing himself and who he is. So let me set it up for you. God told Moses, I want you to come up to the mountain, to the very top of Mount Sinai, and bring 2 tablets for you. Tablets that he was going to write on. You guys, what were those tablets called? The 10 Commandments. The 10 Commandments, and I don't know if they were called that in those days, but there were commandments, and there were 10 of them. And he told Moses to go up to the very top and take the tablets with him and be alone. He wanted him to be alone. So this is what God said in Exodus 34. Then the Lord came down in the cloud. So he's higher than the mountain. He came down in the cloud and stood there with Moses and proclaimed his name, the Lord. And he passed in front of Moses, proclaiming, the Lord, the compassionate and gracious God, slow to anger, abounding in love and kindness, which is hesed, abounding in steadfast love and mercy and loyalty and faithfulness. He's describing himself. He's describing his character. It's not something that God just did once in a while and he was kind. He's talking about who he is. He didn't declare it in a huge, dazzling display of power, but through a simple declaration of his character. Boaz's kindness towards Ruth, that same word, that hesed kindness, is the same one that God described. And Boaz's kindness is actually a reflection of God's own heart, one that welcomes the outsider. Ruth was an outsider. The needy, and offers hope to the broken. Ruth was in a land, she didn't know the language, wasn't aware of the culture. She left her parents. Her husband has died. She left everything she knew. To see the significance of it, and it is very profound, it's important to look at the context. And we talk a lot about that at Crossview to make sure you understand why they're saying this, what was the situation. So the context is really important here because Ruth was a Moabite. And the nation of Moab began with a very tragic, deeply disturbing, shame-filled story found in Genesis 19. And I'm going to read it here. Brace yourself. Both Lot's daughters became pregnant by their father. The older daughter had a son and named him Moab. He is the father of the Moabites of today. So Sodom and Gomorrah, that's the situation. It's been destroyed. And Lot's daughters were engaged to be married. But both of their fiancés had been killed in what happened there at Sodom and Gomorrah. And now they feared that there will be no men left to continue on their family line. It was all about continuing the family line. So they did a terrible thing. They got their father drunk, and then they slept with him. And then the oldest daughter named her son Moab. From the beginning, the very beginning, Moab's identity carried the mark of shame, incest, and disgrace. And to an Israelite, that origin story, see the origin story, how a country began, they would tell that story. That was very, very important and very terrible. And it defined how they viewed Moab into perpetuity, like for ongoing, as an unclean and ungodly people. And as a result, the relationship between Israel and Moab was very troubled and hostile. And due to the actions of the Moabites, Moses wrote this in Deuteronomy. It's sad because there's no redeeming here, but God had a plan with Ruth. No Ammonite or Moabite or any of their descendants, including Ruth, may enter the assembly of the Lord, not even to the 10th generation. So to be a Moabite meant to be excluded from community, to be looked down upon, considered an outsider, not able to go to their temple or to church with others. So you can imagine Ruth, a widowed Moabite woman arriving in Bethlehem, at that time, small, conservative Jewish town, a community filled with people who most likely would not welcome her and would not want to include her. So that's the context of this story. It makes it very different when you read these verses. My attitude changes when I read these verses, because she would have carried shame from her nation's origin, the stigma of Moab's sexual immorality, the resentment of the people that she was moving to, and her own losses. Her husband, her family, her homeland, her security. If she had stayed there in Moab, she would have surely married, resulting in security and a future, and not poverty. When she stepped into Bethlehem's fields, though, she wasn't just poor. She was also marked by shame. And when we understand how marked by shame Ruth must have felt, Boaz's actions are nothing short of miraculous and beautiful. His kindness is not casual. It's redemptive. It's redemptive from that verse in Deuteronomy 23, because it mirrors God's own character. So here's now Ruth's response from knowing the context. Ruth fell at his feet and thanked him warmly. What have I done to deserve such kindness, such hesed? I'm only a foreigner. And here's Boaz's incredible response. Yes, I know. But I also know about everything you have done for your mother-in-law since the death of your husband. I have heard how you left your father and mother and your own land to live here among complete strangers. May the Lord, the God of Israel, under whose wings you have come to take refuge, reward you fully for what you have done. So when Ruth responded and she said, how could you, why are you being so kind to me? Why are you doing this? She knew her status. She expected to be overlooked and even despised. So his kindness is so foreign to her, she was astonished. She couldn't accept his love and mercy. And I find that too when I'm meeting with women who have been through the ringer and have a huge past that may be not savory to us. They don't understand why. Women have said to me, why do you care about me? Why do you want to talk to me? And then Boaz responds to her astonishment by honoring her own hesed, her own character. I think this is so beautiful. He says, may the Lord, under whose wings you have come to take refuge, reward you fully for what you have done. Others might see her as a Moabite. Boaz saw her as a woman of courage, faith, and kindness. Kindness has the incredible power to restore dignity where shame once lived. And we as Christ followers have incredible opportunities every day to show kindness. And you never know who's going to be at the other end of that kindness. Who may walk you down the street when you look at them smiling and say, hello, how are you today? Maybe that's the first smile they've gotten in days. Jesus didn't just preach about love and mercy. He was love and mercy. God said himself in Exodus 34, I am hesed. I am kind. I am faithful. I am loyal. That's who I am. And Jesus sat at tables others avoided. He walked into homes others judged. With Zacchaeus, he talked to him at the tree. He could have just talked at him there, but he said, I'm coming to your house for tea. He invited himself over. I want a relationship with you. I want to be with you. That might have just rocked the socks off the Pharisees. They would have never given him the time of day. The church leaders, the Pharisees were called the church leaders. And yet Jesus practiced hesed all throughout his life. He touched lives like that we would consider the untouchable, the orphan, the prostitute, the widow, the cheater, the poor, the adulterer. Someone said to me not too long ago, do you know so-and-so? I said, no, I don't know that name. Oh, well, he goes to your church. And I said, okay, that's great. Yeah, but he's committing adultery. And I said, well, that's great that he's at our church. Where should they be? Can you imagine someone saying they don't want to go to a church because there's sinners there? Then where would you ever go? Jesus' act wasn't just a shallow act of tolerance. It was a deep, deep love. It reached into the darkest corners of shame and restored the beauty of a person's God-given worth. Do you remember the story in Luke 6 when the Pharisees are kind of trying to trip up the disciples? And I think it must have been outdoors because they could see Jesus and his interactions. So they said to the disciples, after they saw Jesus hanging out with some unsavory people. And I think it was some kind of a gathering or a party. And they said, "Why is your leader hanging out with such scum?" These church leaders said that. Can you fathom? Kindness has the power to leave a person better than it found them. That is what living a kindness lifestyle looks like. But I'll tell you, kindness is costly. It costs us something. It's intentional. It's costly. It also often involves sacrifice and time. The story of Ruth is a beautiful display of costly hesed from Ruth, Naomi, and Boaz, and each one's kindness required surrender and risk and faith. Let's take a look at the kindness of Ruth. Naomi left Moab with her 2 daughter-in-laws and encouraged them to stay in their home. Ruth responded with amazing kindness. She said, "Don't urge me to leave you or to turn back from you. Where you go, I will go. Where you stay, I will stay. Your people will be my people, and your God will be my God." It was radical. It was brave. Her kindness cost her comfort and safety. She gave up her homeland in Boaz, leaving a culture and a language and everything familiar. And by leaving there, she risked the possibility of having a new family and a future there. She totally risked that. She's going to a country that not only does not know her, but that would not really look kindly on her. Ooh, a Moabite. Stay far away. I'm not going to marry that. She looks lovely, but I'm not going to marry her. I'm not going to touch that. She's a foreigner. She's an immigrant. She could have married among her own people, securing stability. But she didn't. She chose to be a foreigner in Israel and a Moabite at that, and this did not guarantee that she would ever marry, securing a future. So now, of course, we're going to hear about Boaz and how he became her kinsman redeemer. And it's such a beautiful story. I encourage you to read it when you have time. Naomi's journey showed a quieter, more inward hesed, a quieter, more inward kindness. At first, her bitterness actually blinded her to God's goodness. She had lost her husband and her 2 sons. Her entire family is gone. And she said to Ruth in chapter 1, I don't have this up there, but she said, "The Lord has dealt bitterly with me." That's how she felt. But then she saw Ruth's faithfulness by coming with her and Boaz's kindness, and her heart softened, and she began to bless others again in her grief and in her sadness. And she said this, the text says, "One day Ruth's mother-in-law, Naomi, said to her, 'My daughter, I must find a home for you. Will you be well provided for?'" Wow. She's a bitter person. She's going to be alone. And by doing this, by pushing Naomi out into the world, "I'm going to help you find someone who can marry you and take care of you," she's actually surrendering her own security. She's releasing Ruth with an obligation from an obligation to her. And if Ruth does marry someone else, that doesn't guarantee that she's going to bring Naomi with her. Right? She selflessly guided Ruth toward a future. Out of her own debilitating grief, Naomi showed kindness, beautiful kindness. And then we have Boaz. His kindness came at a significant price. First of all, he was a respected man in Bethlehem, a landowner, possibly older and influential for sure. And then he too did something radical, risking everything. He went above and beyond by having Ruth, a Moabite. And of course, we know the family origin there, the origin of that country. People would have known, the whole country of Israel would have known about the Moabites. And here's a Moabite gleaning along with the other women, part of them. She was probably learning a language there and keeping the men away, all that. He became her kinsman redeemer. And a kinsman redeemer is, again, I said, a male relative who had the duty to rescue and protect and provide for the family member in need by marrying the widow to preserve the family line. So that's what he did. He risked his reputation. Marrying a Moabite would draw criticism from his peers and his resources. Being a kinsman redeemer, it meant buying Naomi's land, because she did have land in Bethlehem, and supporting Ruth then for her life and being her husband. Everyone gave up something of value, but they gained so much more, didn't they? They all reflected the beautiful heart of God to others. And when we show kindness, we actually mirror God's character to watching world. We don't know who's watching us. We don't know how we treat the attendant at the store that's very slow, and then we see the word trainee there. We don't know how somebody who's watching us respond to her in a kind way. We don't know who's watching us. In January of 2008, I drove my daughter into Winnipeg for her orthodontist appointment. And then after that, we had to make a mad dash to the convention center. It wasn't very far away, but you can't really make a mad dash anywhere in January. You don't know what's going to all happen with the roads. And because she had at the Optimist Festival there, she was playing trombone with her band for a concert. And so she was up there in getting her orthodontist appointment done. And I decided I would get out of the vehicle and go to the back door and move stuff around so she could just slip in quickly and we could be on our way. The problem is I didn't see a huge block of ice there, and I tripped over this big boulder of ice, and I saw in my periphery a post, and I just did not want to hit it with my head, so I put my hand down and landed on my hand. And the pain was blinding. And I remember looking at my hand, and my arm was here, and my hand was kind of like this, kind of crooked. And I noticed legs walking by. I never did see the upper body, but I did see legs. And I remember a couple things. I remember a beautiful wool camel-colored coat. Like, you know those kind with the buttons and a beautiful camel-colored, like kind of a beige and wool. It was beautiful. And she had navy blue pumps. I thought, oh, she must work at a bank because she had, like, pumps. And she had stockings on. And I thought, who the heck wears stockings? Like, I don't even own a pair of stockings. Like nylons, And the leg stopped. And the woman said, you've obviously broken your hand. You need to go to a hospital, but I'm late for a meeting and I've got to go. And she just continued walking. So I was stunned, and it's hard not to think of the Good Samaritan story, right? It'd be hard not to think of that. Somehow I managed to get up, and I got into my vehicle, and I didn't realize I had a phone back then, but I guess we did back in 2008. You laugh. You laugh, but, we didn't used to have cell phones. Well, I remember my first one was this huge thing in the car, like, dear me. Oh. So I got into the vehicle, and I called my friend Sophie, and she's here today. And she literally dropped what she was doing, and she came to get me. And providentially, her husband, who is a doctor, was doing a cast clinic at the Misericordia. It was Wednesday, and he still to this day does casts at the Misericordia. And she came and she got me, and we drove right there. She drove, and the pain was very miserable. And there was a whole pile of people in the waiting room, and I felt so bad. But we walked right through them. We went right to his office, and he said, "You need surgery, and we're gonna do that tonight. I'm not scheduled." He had to make special arrangements with the Grace Hospital and do that. And the lack of kindness in the first half of that story, it's hard to forget that. It's part of my life, right? But the abundance of kindness in the second half of the story has stayed with me, of course, all these years. One person walked by and left me on the sidewalk, and another friend rushed with action, and she and her husband showed me an abundance of compassion and kindness and love. So if kindness is so powerful, and it's something I'm remembering, and kindness is who God is, and we're God followers, right? We're Christ followers. Why don't we practice it more? So what are the barriers to practicing it? Well, first of all, busyness. Like, for sure, busyness and selfishness. The woman who saw me laying on the ground, she wasn't selfish, but she was busy. And she just couldn't do that. But I'm thinking she could have taken 1 minute just to help me out, right? But she didn't. And we can get very wrapped up in our own schedules that it's easy to not see the opportunities sitting right in front of our eyes or laying down on the road. We see someone struggling across the road. Is it our natural bent to go and help that person? Because if it isn't, we're not living a lifestyle of kindness. We're doing kind things once in a while. But I'm talking about actually thinking about it. I'm not saying everyone has to be like my daddy, wake up in the day and say, who can I bless today? It's kind of a neat idea, really, when you think about that. My friend was busy with her day, but she chose to stop and rearrange her schedule and come to my aid. That's true kindness. Actually, it's meeting someone else's needs and then doing something about it. It's an action, and again, it reflects God's heart. Selfishness says, what do I get out of this? Kindness says, how can I serve? Know someone quite well who once said, why are you helping that person move? Like, why are you helping them? Like, are they going to help you? Just give them some money and they can find their own mover. Why are you packing all those boxes? Like, what's in it for you? It's not like they're going to help you. Selfishness is the opposite of kindness because it focuses inward instead of outward. Selfishness says, what do I get out of it? And kindness says, how can I serve? Another thing that prevents us from being kind is our judgment and our prejudice. Like the Israelites towards the Moabites, we sometimes decide who deserves our kindness. Oh, I'm not going to be kind to that guy. Like he was doing this and this and this. And who knows if he's not still doing that? I'm staying away. I've lived 69 years since a couple of weeks ago. I know I'm approaching 70. It sounds huge, 70. Oh. Anyway, no offense to you who are perfectly 70 and older. But I'll tell you, I don't recall our culture. So I've lived a lot of years, and I've been in ministry most of those years. I don't recall our culture so chronically filled with judgment and prejudice, honestly. I had some stories in here, and Chris said it's just too much, so I had to cut a few. What's happened to us? We would naturally have different opinions. I've had many of them with different people, friends and family, about parenting, about sports teams. Carl wearing a Saskatchewan. Now we're supposed to be kind to Carl, so everybody say a kind word. So we would have naturally opinions about sports teams, about schools, about homeschooling, about the government, about who our premier is, the prime minister, the president of the United States. We would have all these opinions, and we'd agree to disagree. And it wouldn't wreck a friendship. We're disagreeing about who's vaccinated and who's not vaccinated, and I know somebody who won't even have her family over because they were vaccinated. 5 years. You guys, there's something seriously wrong. We've normalized and justified judging others. Some are more determined to prove themselves right. Why has that become so important? It's like we're standing on these soapbox yelling our opinions on social media. It's toxic there. Rather than reflecting the love of Jesus. Remember what he said in Exodus 34, I am kind. That's who God is. Our prejudice often builds invisible walls that block the flow of kindness. It stops us. We feel prejudice, and we see something that might, sadly, we look at somebody who even has a flag on their house, and we think, oh, what do they believe? It's just, man. We focus on differences, somebody's background, their history, the choices, their appearances, their beliefs, and we forget the truth that every single person was made in the image of God, and he loves every single person tenaciously, passionately. Like the Pharisees, we seem to cling to what is right while missing the heart of God standing right in front of us. The other thing that might prevent us from showing kindness is our own hurt and our offense and bitterness. I'll tell you, when I am sad, when I feel hurt, when I'm feeling bitter, I want to isolate in my room, in my house, and not talk to everyone and not answer anything, right? That is a natural thing. It's important to acknowledge first the deep wounds like the death of a loved one, a horrific diagnosis, betrayal, trauma, rejection, abuse. They shake us to the core, and grief and pain can leave us feeling raw, guarded, numb, forgotten, hurt, extremely sad, and the goal is never to rush people past their pain. There shouldn't be a line, well, you should be over it by now. But hopefully during their journey, during my journey, my friend's journey, through their pain, that we can see how healing and kindness can coexist and even grow together. But I also believe that getting stuck in our hurt, can lead to offense and bitterness, and our natural instinct is to protect ourselves. I remember I was so stuck in my hurt and I knew by heart the things that had happened, and I could list them in a row and tell people. I was totally stuck and incapable of being kind. We build walls around our heart to avoid further pain. That's very true. We don't want to be hurt again. But kindness, God-like kindness, can't thrive behind those walls. It flows from open-heartedness, from vulnerability, taking risks. Ruth took a risk. That's really important. And from seeing others with compassion, even when our own hurts, our own hearts ache, and even when we hurt so deeply. If we stay focused on our own wounds, that can actually control our life. That's what happened to me. And we can unintentionally lose sight of others who also need compassion and grace. We don't even notice it. We don't see it because we're so involved with our own hurt. And here's the beautiful paradox. As we begin to show kindness, even small acts, a happy face, a heart at the end of a text, a hello, how are you doing, that kind of thing, small acts, healing often begins in us. Naomi, in her grief, even changed her name to Mara, which means bitter. And then in her journey through that grief, she showed compassion and kindness toward Ruth. Do you see that? Extending hesed softens our hearts and realigns us with the heart of God as it did for Naomi. Absolutely, we're allowed to feel our feelings. But the very act of choosing kindness in our pain can become a step toward freedom in that pain. That's what happened to me. It's possible. We're allowed to feel our feelings and express our opinions, but as followers of Jesus, we're called to wear kindness. That's kind of weird, right? Wearing it. But not to choose one day, I'm going to do a kind thing today, but to choose to live a lifestyle of kindness. Especially with those who are different, who have a sordid past. In our world, we don't have Moabites, but we have lots of people with a past who aren't making the right choices. Well, until they make right choices, I'm not going to have anything to do with them. People who we don't agree with, and people who are happy when we're not. By the way, happy people was really irritating to me, and sometimes people like my dad was just super happy. But it would irritate me, but I look back on that now and I pull off to the side of the road and I say, Jesus, I'm sorry I was unkind to him when he was happy and I was grieving. There's a beautiful verse in Proverbs 3:3. It says, never let loyalty and kindness leave you. Tie them around your neck as a reminder. Wear them deep within your heart. The picture here is of wearing kindness. You put it on like a piece of clothing, like a necklace. We clothe ourselves in kindness. Binding something around our neck means it's not hidden. It's there for all to see. People notice what we're wearing, right? They notice. Kindness is who we are and what we do. We are wearing kindness, and it's visible in the way we live, the way we speak, how we treat others. Kindness as a lifestyle means faithfully living with eyes wide open to the need of others and a willingness to respond with generosity, gentleness, and mercy. I have a dear and wonderful friend, a woman and her husband, who've been my friends for well over 40 years. About a month ago, I came home and someone had brought in my recycling bin. I didn't know who it was. I thought it could have been my son. It could have been lots of different friends. My neighbors don't have the code to my garage, but I think like 100 million people have it by now. So someone had brought in my recycling and left a very, like my favorite pop. Okay, it's really good, you guys. I think you can get it at the store now. It's cranberry ginger ale, zero sugar. Now, ginger ale is already caffeine-free. I have to lessen my caffeine these days, but it's also zero sugar. I need every little bit of help, right? So there was pop on my step, and I thought, wow, who did this? And then I was over at this friend's house, the friend that I'm talking about, the next day, and she said, did you enjoy your pop? So then I knew who it was. Here's the thing. Just a few days before that, they got the news that my friend's husband, who's also my friend, had incurable cancer diagnosis. And yet in the middle of hearing that news, she walked to my house. Now, I don't live on a main street. I live kind of on a cul-de-sac. You have to kind of walk into the area. And she came in there, and in her grief, brought in my recycling bin, and then brought me pop. She decided to bless me with kindness. And then a few weeks later, I was home with Thanksgiving. It was a Monday, and my son and his family were over, and we were having a wonderful time, and that dear friend came over with her grandson to do something that was hugely significant to me. And people who know me will know why. She decided that they wanted to cut down all my shrubs for the winter and take all my flowers out of the flower pots and put them in the garbage and clean up my yard. Now, if anybody knows me, hating gardening is not a strong enough word. I despise it to the core of my being. I love flowers. I love beautiful shrubs. I would love a nice gardener to come over and do all of that for me. I can just enjoy it. Never pick a weed. And the reason why she was there on Monday was because they weren't having a family gathering, because they're sad. And their family's sad, and they didn't want to get together on that day and just pretend to be happy. And in her deep grief, she came over to my house and cleaned up my yard. We packed all the well, they mostly did. I did a little bit, and put all the stuff in garbage bags in my garage. And I was going to take them to the road the next day. So I went to work the next day, and I came home, and they were all gone. And she had taken them to the dump for me, so that I wouldn't have to take them to the road. In her extreme grief and not having a family gathering, she shone Jesus to me in her grief. And she did that with her grandson, modeling loving others, even in pain. She modeled that to him. He'll not forget that. The kindness of my friends reflected the heart of God to me, and the ripple effect was profound because I won't ever forget it, and I get to tell you, and now you know the story. Hesed, kindness, compassion, faithfulness, and generosity. And in a world where voices are often raised in anger and division, wearing kindness becomes a powerful witness that points others to Jesus. We've got to stop raising our voice that incites anger and division. Every act of kindness says, this is what God is like. I'm being Jesus. When we choose to wear kindness, we clothe ourselves with the character of Jesus. So my encouragement for all of us today is to let the kindness and active love of God be what we're known for. Wow, she's got empathy. She's a kind person. When you talked about Boaz, you knew empathy. That's what we should be known for. That's something to stand up for. Not who's not in power, or who's in power, or who, whatever. To stand up for Jesus, to be like Jesus to others. And by choosing to be kind and thoughtful, by shifting our poster that says, I must be right, to I must be loving. By wearing kindness, we reflect Jesus. So as you go about this week, I want you to think about this. In what ways can you wear kindness so that people can see what God is like through you? And then the next week, and the next week, and the more we start living a lifestyle of kindness, the more we'll live a lifestyle of kindness. It's a ripple effect. That becomes who we are. Can you imagine if we were all kind and loving and people would say, I want that? How come you're different? That's my challenge for all of us today. Let's pray, okay? Lord Jesus, thank you that you modeled kindness and love to the least of these, right in front of the church leaders. You did it so beautifully, and you told us that the most important thing is to love God and love others. Lord, I pray that we'll remember that today. and that will make a difference in the world by standing up for you, by being you through the kindness and love of others. And I pray this in your holy name. Amen.